This episode is brought to you by Accenture. When your advertising operations fall out of sync, everything else follows. Spotify and Accenture are working together to reinvent the rhythm of ad sales, using automation, analytics, and smarter workflows to simplify campaign delivery and access better data across the business. The result? Less time spent on operations, more time connecting brands with the moments and fandoms that matter most. Learn more at accenture.com/Spotify.
The new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire. The human postponer. They were the master of one phrase. I'll circle back on that. But 3 months later, you are the one doing all their work and wondering how big that circle is. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can take the hiring load off your plate by automating the hiring busy work from the initial job post to scheduling interviews. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
Hey, it's Bill from the Bill Simmons podcast. FIFA World Cup 26 fans, listen up. As the official beer sponsor of the FIFA World Cup 26, Michelob Ultra is giving away $1 million worth of FIFA World Cup 26 tickets and prizes. Enter now at michelobultra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26. Michelob Ultra FIFA World Cup 26 superior access, no purchase necessary. Open U.S. residents 21 plus, begins on December 1st, 2025, ends on July 31st, 2026, multiple entry periods. Visit www.michelobultra.com/superior access/FIFA World Cup 26 for free entry deadlines, prizes, and details.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How We're the podcast. And as the lads have their first pre-season game at York City, it got us all a bit misty-eyed about some of the links we've had over the years between the two clubs. There was, of course, Denis Smith and Marco Gabbiadini, famously in the late 80s and early 1990s. We had Bobby Saxton as well, who had spells with both clubs, and there's a whole lot more, which I'm sure you're shouting at me right now. But we thought we'd pull something out of the archives. Now, this is something that we recorded around 4 or 5 years ago, I think it was. And it was a conversation that we were very lucky to have with Ricky Sbragia, as he told us about his playing days at York City under Denis Smith and those giant-killing exploits of the 1980s at Bootham Crescent. And he talks to us about joining Sunderland under Mick Buxton, a good story about being shown around Roker Park in the pitch black. And then how everything changed under Peter Reid, and then his move to Manchester United, and ultimately his path to becoming Sunderland manager. But it was a brilliant conversation that we're going to put back out there and pull this from the archives and put it out for you all to enjoy. But a heads up that we have improved our methods of recording since then, so the sound might not be up to our usual standards in places. I'd also like to think, hopefully, fingers crossed, that I'm hopefully a little bit more improved as well. So apologies if I'm a bit crap as well. But we're sticking it out there again because he was a great servant for both clubs, and we hope you enjoy. So cue the usual intro music. Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn, where today we have something a bit special, and we're speaking to someone who's had a couple of spells at the club during some fantastic times for Sunderland. As a player, he played for the likes of Birmingham City, Walsall, Blackpool, as well as with Sunderland royalty at York City, which I'm very much looking forward to getting into. And then after hanging up his boots, he became one of the most respected coaches in the game, who ended up as the manager of Sunderland just over a decade ago. Today, we're very pleased to be speaking to none other than Ricky Sbragia. Hello, Ricky.
Hi, Chris. Thanks very much for the invite. Thank you.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks again for joining us. How are you keeping?
I'm good. In general, I'm good. I think I've been about 3 years now out of the game, so I've done 47 years and it's been a long time. And it's been a long time travelling, to be honest with you. So I thought it was a bit time to come out of it and stay at home and spend some time with my wife.
Yeah. When you say home now, is that around the York area now?
Yeah, I've always lived here. I've lived here since about 82. We moved when I obviously went to Birmingham. We married in 76 and lived in Birmingham. Then I joined Walsall, but I still could commute. So I commuted there with a player called Roy McDonough, who used to be a centre forward at Birmingham. They bought it, two of us. And then I got a free transfer, which you never really want. And then Alan Bull picked me up at Blackpool. So we moved to Blackpool. I had 2 years there, and then I moved to York City in 82. And then we then set up a home here. So when I stopped playing in general, our two girls at the time were doing education, which was really important to us. So the decision was that I would travel and the family would stay at home and the girls could stay at their own school. So I've been doing that since 82. I came to Sunderland 94. From 94 onwards, I've always been seen to be travelling. So I think it's about time to give it a rest.
Yeah. I mean, beautiful part of the world. I love York, but yeah, I mean, when we were talking the other day, you mentioned you know, on the odd occasion bump into the Gabardini brothers and a few others around the area.
Yeah, I mean, Gabbers is they've got an old York boys now on Instagram that's run by Andy Mack. So a lot of the players have joined that, and Ricardo's joined that, Marco's joined that. Marco had a hotel just at Holgate Bridge, but he's actually sold it now, and so did Ricardo with his mum and dad. But Ricardo's bought a smaller place. They've done theirs at Fulford. So I bumped into Marco, and the last time I bumped into him was probably about a year ago. Bumped into him. So lovely lad, good player, you know, and I've got a lot of time for the both. So I've got a lot of time for the family because the family have been absolutely great. And then so now and again, I just bump into people, and so I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't recognise them. Some will be young apprentices I had back in 82, you know, and maybe 86 when I became the coach, although I knew them then. But yeah, so it's good. York's a lovely place. I don't get any hassle, which is important to me, and I can go out and enjoy myself and then enjoy the lovely city, which it is.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously in the introduction, I mentioned some of your clubs during your playing days. I mean, you told me a story before we recorded the other day about, you know, you were talking to your grandson about about what you actually did as a footballer, and that you were a footballer. But I mean, you know, being such a highly regarded coach in the game and doing what you've done on that side, do you think a lot of people forget that you were a player?
Yeah, I probably was a better coach than a player. I didn't do bad as a player. I made my debut, I think it was 18, at Birmingham against Leeds United when Brian Clough, maybe 19, Brian Clough was the manager. We lost 1-0 when Alan Clark scored. And then the next day I sort of dislocated my fibula. And so I was out for about 20 odd weeks, 25 weeks, and never really recovered from it, to be truthful with you. So I probably played off and on about 40, I've been including subs. But I felt I needed to play. I needed to play week in, week out. I didn't mind the early part of my age playing at the football combination. But then I had a goal to try and play in the first team, you know, and it was restricted because there was better centre-backs than me. The two older ones were Roger Hind and John Roberts, John Roberts was the Welsh international captain. He was like Garth, and Roger wasn't far off it, you know, so, and then Joe Gallagher was there, and, you know, so I got offered a 2-year contract in 78 through Jim Smith, and I asked him if it would be possible, could I go out, you know, if there's a possibility a club would show interest. And I signed the contract, and within about 3 months, they sold me to Walsall, which was great for me because I wanted to play first-team football. I was at that age, probably 22, and I needed to play, you know, and I needed to test myself, to be honest with you. But my early part of Birmingham, maybe 17, 18, I did a prelim coaching badge, and it was part of the apprenticeship we had. And Mick Bailey took us from Wolverhampton, an old midfield player. And I can remember having my test, and I was doing shooting. I can remember doing shooting, and then it was just this mud field we're in, you know, and with a goal, which bent and all that. And then turned around and just seen all these kids running, all ages, all sizes, and thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? You know, I've never been in this situation before. And it was nerve-wracking, but I managed just about to get through to it. And then from then on, a friend of mine had asked me to coach one of his teams. I used to go with Paul Hendry and a lad called Jimmy Calderwood. They came down from Scotland, and one of their friends asked me to do some coaching for the team. So I said, yeah, okay. So I did it. And I did it in a place called Broadway in Moore. I did it there, and I did about 7-8 weeks. And it was good because it got me out at night, you know, instead of even in the digs. I thought it was a bit different, meet people and all that, you know, and I got a bit more experience in coaching. But what I didn't realise, Chris, that he worked for Ansell's. So my payment was beer vouchers. My payment, and I was the most popular man in the Broadway pub. Truthfully, and there was about 12 of us. I never drank at that time. I didn't drink till probably 2021. But and then I used to put bingo tickets. I used to put them behind the bar, and the barman knew us all. And I used to say, when the lads come in, just give them whatever they want. And so that's what happened. And from then on, I used to get these raffle beer tickets, and we used to go to Broadway, and I just put it down. I'd probably have a Coke at the time, I think it was at Snake Bites. I think it was cider lager they were on at the time. So I was popular until I thought, well, that's it. I think I need to focus a bit more on myself. But I was popular. It was the first time I think I'd been really popular with everybody in the pub. So I knew. So it was quite good. It was a good experience. But probably 73 was probably my first time I did coaching. So but as a player, I went to Walsall, did well for 2 years. Did really well at York. Blackpool, I got an Achilles injury, which you don't actually sort of think of. You just don't think of injuries. And then I just thought then, what am I going to do? And it came to a situation when it had the old transfer thing. I think it was about March. It started in March. I can remember 9 of us going in. Willie Morgan, the old Man United player, was at Blackpool. And being told that the club are really struggling and would we have their contracts paid up, and so we all agreed. And we played for reserves, couldn't play for the first team then, and then thinking, what am I going to do? Exactly what am I going to do after football? And sent away, got a reply from Hong Kong, got a reply from Rochdale, and I got a reply from York City. So it was. I was going to be a red coat at Pontins, which was only about 10 minutes away from my house. I just couldn't see me doing that. I would just for me, but yeah. So there was that side of it, and you get your family. And I thought I'll go in the pub trade. I'll do that. I did 2 years at Tetley, but that was hard work. That was really hard work. And I couldn't see my family, the girls dealing with that either, or my wife. So I focused more on the coaching.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ricky, go on.
No, unfortunately for me, I managed to pass my badges, my badges, and then being lucky, really just being really lucky, and getting a job, and Denis Smith did fantastic for me in '86 when he offered me a player coach. But you can't play and coach the young players. You just can't do it. You've either got to focus on one. So I've asked him, can I go coaching? What he didn't tell me, he was going to half my wages. He didn't say that to me. He says, okay, that sounds a good idea, so I wasn't paid much. So I think it was. But Dennis was the first one to really give me a job at York City.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, just in terms of, like you said, those injuries coming through, because, like you said, you were at Birmingham with some big names like Trevor Francis and Howard Kendall when you first went there, and then you made that move to Walsall. And I was wondering, and I was just kind of looking at it before. Was it Alan Ball who signed you for Blackpool?
Yeah, it was Alan Ball, and we I think Walsall bought Roy now for about 40. I think Roy was still there, and then Alan Buckley was the manager at Walsall, and everything was okay. And then he didn't offer me a contract. No, he did offer me a contract, but then it basically said I was the club quite interested in me. So I went and spoke to Alan Ball, who was fantastic. When you talk about things, you say like, what am I going to ask for, and what do you think I'm worth, and everything you ask for, your wife probably turns around and says, "Oh, you should have asked for more. You should ask for." But what was strange about this one, when we went to see Alan Ball, I went in to talk about my deal, and they offered me 2 years, which was great, and the money was good, everything was good about it. But they brought my wife Joan in. And she said to her, "And what do you think?" She didn't know what to say. And he did say he turned around and said to her, "Look, if you're happy with it, then everything's okay. We'll do the deal." And she went, "Yeah, I'm fine. Everything was okay that way." It's the first time she's really been put in the spot by a manager about my wages. Yeah, so it was fantastic, Alan Ballard. And with
Yeah.
Ted McDougall, who was the coach, and Ted was fantastic. There was obviously, there's always that trouble in the background with the chairman and things like that. You don't quite, you read it, but you don't quite actually see it.
Yeah.
But it was great, and they said with Denis at York, Viv Busby at York, Viv was fantastic. And Denis in the morning used to split us all up, Chris. He used to split us up, and he'd go, okay, split yourselves up, get into two groups. Some is with Viv, the rest is with me, after Viv hit. So everybody would go to Viv. Denis used to pull everybody back, right? McPhail, you get in, you're a defender. Ricky, you get back here, you get back. Stevie Senior, you cut. We used to think, oh, God, because Denis was lovely, but boring. Viv had a sparkle about him. Loved little things, little football. That Denis was like running a little bit, getting the exercise done. So everybody. So eventually, I think Denis stopped that. He just said, "Right, you half, you're with me. That has to be Viv." But but they were lovely. They were lovely people, and I learned a lot from them as well.
I think you were only, I was looking back, I might be wrong, but I think you were only about 26 when you joined York. And obviously a lot of Sunderland fans are going to be familiar with Denis Smith, but I think he was only appointed a couple of months before you arrived as well. So, in terms of him replying to your letter saying, that you sent to a few clubs, could you see that Denis Smith was trying to build something and getting some kind of good coaches, or, replying to the likes of yourself? Viv Busby was there. Could you see what he was trying to build?
Yeah, I think when I got there after a while, the people he brought in, there's a great story about that because when we lived in Blackpool, Rochdale had offered me far more in York City and more years in my contract. But so I went up there, spoke to them, and then 3 days later, they asked me to go up again to speak to Rochdale. So I went up, and I'll be honest with you, I went up the M62, come off of the Rochdale and went round the roundabout back on the M62 back to Blackpool. I did. And my wife Joan said to me, God, that was quick. I said, I couldn't go. I just couldn't go, and I don't know why. Maybe I was thinking just the thought of Rochdale and Spotland and things like that. I just couldn't go. And I know Denis had offered me sort of, typical Denis would offer you 3 months, 6 months. Denis, so I said to him, look, Rochdale have offered me 2 years. I've offered me a sign on for you. I can waiver that. I don't mind. I don't have a problem with that. So, knowing Denis being so really kind-hearted, he offered me a year. So I went for the year, and then obviously I played with Denis. I played alongside Denis, who was like fantastic, and the place was bubbly. The chairman, there was Michael Sinclair was the chairman. There was Mr. Webb. There was Barry Swallow. There was Mr. Houghton. There were fantastic board members, and they come in. It was a right family atmosphere. And then obviously McPhail came and Alan Hay came. But the thing about Denis had been there as a player coach. So Denis knew what was there and what he needed. He needed, it was probably 6 months before he became manager. So he had Bernie up front, who was exceptional, was an exceptionally good player, and Gary Ford and the big Keith Walwyn up front, and the big Mally Crosby. My God, it's like Sunderland all over. Mally Crosby in midfield, and they brought in Sean Hazelgrave and Stevie Senior. So the back four was like mates. It was Chris Evans, who used to be at Arsenal and Stoke. Chris came as me, Chris, and John McPhail and Alan Hay were the back four. But we did well the first year. Did really probably better than what Denis thought. And then the second year, it just went for us. We brought in, I think he brought in a couple more, so it was Bernie was terrific. Keith Walwyn and Bernie were a fantastic pair. And so was Ford. And then the Pollard in there as well. And but everybody, what he did, we used to go out on a Tuesday. We were told to go out on a Tuesday afternoon. We used to run on a Tuesday, a really hard session on a Tuesday. And it was compulsory. We had to go to the Bootham Tavern to have a few pints. So we used to be there for about 1:30. So then you're talking about 83, 84, you're talking about this. And then, and then after that, the younger players would go somewhere else. And the older players would probably go home. They'd stay. But someone would be out to 2 in the morning. We'd go home about 8. The sort of older ones, we'd go about 8. And then But it was compulsory. We had to go, and it gave us a bond, a really good bond. And we got to know each other, and they all gelled together. And as a unit, they went out together, And I can't really mind in the dressing room anybody having a go at anybody. It was always positive. We knew we'd make mistakes or we didn't do as well. We knew all that Denis did, but and then Mali came in as a youth team coach as well. And then here's another one for you, Roger Jones, goalkeeper.
Yeah, goalkeeper, yeah.
Yeah, so the exchange of people who played in Division 1 at the time, or the Premier, the Division 1, who were free transfers. And then, but at that age of 25, 26, 27, and still had a number of years ahead of him, and he'd done really well. If he was super like that, and well backed by, I'd say, Mr. Sinclair. Colin Webb did at youth. He was fantastic as well. So it was lovely, lovely. And I think Denis was a bit surprised when we ran away with the league, but there was always that thought we'd never lose, just never lose. And then if somebody get injured, somebody else came in and just done it for us, So I think I played something like 55 games. I missed the last game because I took a booking in my second last game. Lad was going through, and I thought I'm bringing them down, and we got a 1-1 that day. And then I missed the last game, so it was worth it. It was actually worth it. But it was. From all the other clubs that had, Chris, it was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just because some of the listeners might be, jumping on Wikipedia and trying to look at the seasons. I mean, I was just kind of thinking, your first season, you just missed out promotion. Second season, like you say, running away with it. You're actually the first team in history in the Football League to get over 100 points, which is always going to be the answer. Always going to be the answer to a fantastic quiz question. Down the years, but like you say, I mean, you've rattled off so many names there: Roger Jones, Martin Crosby, Viv Busby, John Bird, John McPhail, Alan Hay. But all those names that you rattled off are all people who went on to either work for or play for Denis Smith later on. I mean, you talked about that, that atmosphere, and obviously winning games does that. But it's incredible how many of those squad members went on to work with Denis Smith further down the line.
Yeah. I mean, Denis knew all their antiques they were up to and all that, but they were exceptionally good players. I mean, John Byrne for me was, he'd been to York. I can remember getting in the first year, and he was worried he might get a free transfer. And I think Denis reassured him, says, "Don't be so silly. You're one of my main men." And he was, for goals and things like that, and his ability, and used to give you a little smile, and he liked couple of beers after. We always, after the game, went for a couple of beers. All the families would mix all, things like that. But it's different age group, from 26 to maybe Roger was 50. Well, he didn't say he was 50. He's probably about 30, Roger 35. But we all mixed, then got to know their wives and all that, but the bond was there. And Denis, we'd only something like 18 players. I think it was something like that. We didn't get a lot of injuries, and we just had this. We knew anything up front would score goals for us, and we knew at the back with Roger at the time that we would hardly concede. We just didn't give in much away, and Mac was a good player. John Mack was a good player, and, where I used to talk to John quite a bit, just to guide him into positions, but then Alan Hay was left behind him. It was like, it got to a stage where we never ever thought we'd lose.
Yeah.
And that was probably after 8 games, 10 games, because of what happened the following year. And there wasn't a lot of changes.
Yeah. Well, that's it. When you went up to Division 3, you were actually pushing for promotion in Division 3 as well, which was incredible at the time. But it was the FA Cup where the kind of big headlines came. 1984-85, fourth round, you beat Arsenal 1-0. I think you might have beat Walsall in the third round. But if that wasn't enough, in the fifth round, you drew, well, clearly, 1984, 1985, that Liverpool team were unbelievable. And they came to York, and you managed a 1-1 draw where you came from behind. Ricky Sbragia scored the equaliser and forced the replay. But you don't see enough, because I was watching all the highlights of that game earlier, and you don't see enough of these sort of cup games in the modern game. But I mean, that must have been one that was just incredible to be part of.
Yeah, I think everything about it, the weather before the game, and with the fans obviously putting straw on the pitch, and then Dennis, to be honest, I can remember that week we didn't really speak about Liverpool. It was mainly about us. How could we cope with it? We knew they had world-class players. We knew they were exceptional, the best, probably best in Britain at that time, but we just got on. It had a plan, which we played every game, and but fortunately, I think Sean Hazelmove and Marley Crosby just sat in front of us. They did protect us from Dalglish and Rush, and but they did so many great players. But the weather, the pitch itself benefited us because of it was a little bit hard. And it's the first time, Chris, I'll be honest with you, I wore leather studs. It was the very first time we wore leather studs. We were told to wear them because the pin and the stud grip the ground better than aluminium studs, which were really slippy. And then they went one up and go back to 1-1. And I was just fortunate. I was right place at the right time. The first one I shot at hit the bar. I think Keith hit the bar with a header, Keith Wallen, and then I think Monty had one off the line and just rebound for me, and I just poked. I never scored in my left peg, but I just thought I'd poke it and have a look at it. But yeah, I was fortunate. I'd just been at the right place at the right time, scoring a goal, and just everything about it, the atmosphere. I mean, we get hit with a bottle. Can you remember a Guinness bottle getting hit with a Guinness bottle as we were all crowding in the 6-yard line, which we should never have done. That was a Liverpool end. But it was just phenomenal. It was just great. And then on the Sunday, I met Ian Rush on the Sunday. They asked if I photos, and I met him. He was absolutely fantastic, really great. And we knew when we were going to Anfield, it was going to be completely different. We knew that, and but on the night we did celebrate. We did have a few beers as a team and enjoyed it because it might never happen again. So why not enjoy it at that time? And we did that, and we're back in on Monday, and I think we played Liverpool on the Tuesday or Wednesday. It was that week, and lost 7-0. So it was an experience. But no, everything was great. The crowd were great. The dressing room after the game was fantastic, and the gelling of it was always there. There was a belief, that we'd give people a good game. We'd give them, we'd never back in, and we had big hearts, and we were very honest, and we achieved what we wanted to do. We'd love to have beat Liverpool, but we achieved to go back there and get them the club more money to invest in players, and obviously do the stadium up as well. And so we achieved that.
Yeah,
I think I got £10. I think we got £10 bonus. I don't think it was worth it, but there again. So it was fantastic. And then obviously, it's like everything else. People say, "Oh, Ricky Sbragia's done," but at the end of the day, it was all it got a draw. It was every one of us, and a belief that we could get something from the game.
Yeah. Well, I did wonder because, like I said, I watched the highlights, and all through the highlights, actually. I mean, I remember he had a fantastic game against Sunderland, but Keith Wallen was a real handful for Liverpool that day. He was fantastic. But I was going to say, did he say anything? Because you just pipped him to poking the ball home when you actually scored.
Yeah, well, I think it's just like, you you score and you think, what do I do? I'll have a run to the left, being like a mug, and then get hit with a bottle off the Liverpool. So, no, I think when Monty came over and Sean and they all colored up, it was just, I think it was a relief to get back into the game, but the belief that anything could happen with us. We could have won it. There was a chance we could win it. We could have lost the game as well, but I shot it. I've watched it a couple of times. I've got a nice photo somewhere in the attic and me striking the ball. And I think I scored 17 goals in my career. It wasn't many, but without any doubt, that was the most important one.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And then, as you say, you go on. I mean, York are impressing in the 3rd division, and then in your well, I think it was your final season as a player at the beginning of the season when Sunderland they dropped down, and we drew. Actually, we were in the 2nd division, and Laurie McMenemy was manager. We drew York City in the first round of the League Cup, and you were part of the York side that won 4-2 at Roker Park. And I mentioned Keith Wallen, and Keith Wallen took us apart that night, and there was just over 9,000 there. But what were your memories of playing at Roker Park that night?
Well, I'd never ever played at Roker Park, and it's steeped in history, and it was just absolutely fantastic. On his day, Keith was a world beater, Keith.
Mm.
But when you go there and they all stand out in the middle and you have a little chat and you have a look around, and it's really just to get the dressing room ready for the strips and get the boots out and all that, and you have a little chat and you look at it and think, my God, there's some history here. When the banks up, the supporters are going to be there and they're very passionate, the Sunderland people, but they just couldn't deal with Keith that day, and that surprised me a little bit, Chris, because I thought Denis would have bought Keith Houchin because of what he did for him, over the 3 or 4 years, and still could do that. But when you get players like John and that up there as well, and technically we were decent. We weren't one of these teams that just, like Cambridge, hit the corners, it's very sandy, the ball on no bounce, let's get a long throw and go from there. We played down the side of people, and but the atmosphere was great. If you said to me, we did came away with a win, and we were talking about a draw, it'd be nice to get a draw and bring them back to our place, and win there. But I think on the night, everything went well for us, and we played above our own standards. But we were exceptional, really exceptional. And Walwyn, Big Keith was out of this world.
Yeah. Yeah, he was fantastic. And actually that night, we mentioned it early on, but a young Marco Gabardini came on as substitute that night. I think he was only 18 or something like that. And obviously Denis took him to Sunderland. But I mean, he was pretty raw even when he came to Sunderland. But did you see that it was obvious he had potential at that stage?
Yeah, he could score goals, which was a massive plus. And it was a bit of arrogance about Marco, but it was a nice arrogance. He would listen. He was very highly educated as well. You wouldn't think that, but he was. He was, but just how he played and all that, and it never got to him. It didn't worry him at all about coming on or anything like that. Because he total belief in what he could do, and I think for me, that Eric Gates. I maybe just jumping a wee bit ahead, but Eric Gates made Marco Gavardini. Because of his positional, and he probably talked to Marco about playing off him or running off him, but there was always potential. And then Christian and would have been there at the time, and we were taking Ricardo in as well. It was similar, so maybe Marco had a little bit more nous about the way he played, and believed a little bit more in what he had. And he wasn't following anybody, where Ricardo, we say Ricardo, people talk about Marco, but Ricardo was decent as well, was an exceptionally good player.
Yeah. And then I think it was the season after the 1987, I think, when you kind of hung up your playing boots, but it was around the same time that Denis Smith left to take the Sunderland job, and he was replaced by Bobby Saxton, and obviously you had that role under Denis Smith. I mean, was it a concern that it wouldn't continue under Bobby Saxton? Was there a conversation there that you had to have with Bobby Saxton to continue?
Yeah, I think what happened, I think Denis, more than likely, Denis had probably thought he'd done enough for the club. He couldn't really go any further. And when a club like Sunderland call, you can't refuse them. You just can't refuse them. And possibly I was thinking that maybe the game we played in the League Cup maybe got him the job as well. They've seen that and seen what he's got, and they're not big names. We did no big names, and we beat Sunderland then. But I think the big concern was it was breaking up. Things were breaking up. Players were wanting to leave. Burnley was wanting to leave. Fordy went to Leicester. Their contracts were up, and I think they wanted to go outside and see what it was like. Get away from home and test ourselves again. And but then the mass exodus happened with, Viv left, and then Roger went, and then Maori went, and then the players went. And, you can understand that. You can understand, although probably chairman at the time may have not enjoyed it. But I mean, that's football. That's how it is. Because there'll be times in your life where the chairman makes a decision he doesn't want, he lets you go. And so it works the other way as well. But I thought they went up there, and I thought they were the right people to do that. And the good thing about them was that they were all very close to each other, and they all, although they had opinions, they all would back Denis, which you need. You just need that. You need somebody, you want to have an opinion. You might disagree with him, but at the end of the day, the manager makes that final decision, and then you stay by that. I don't moan about it after, you have your opinion there, but I think Sunderland did really well to get them all.
Because it wasn't the done thing then to take a management team, was it? Really, it was, not.
No.
And I think I'm sure because we've done an interview with Denis Smith, and he was talking about Bob Murray not wanting to pay compensation to York for Denis Smith, and then not wanting to pay compensation for the coaching staff as well. So it was kind of a leap of faith almost to take a management team, because that was pretty rare back then.
Yeah, and I think, as I said earlier, I think Dennis could trust what he had. He knew them all. He knew how hard they worked, and they were very dedicated. And I think sometimes you bring somebody in, it could be a little bit difficult for you. You don't know what he's thinking, you don't know what he's saying, and what his thoughts are. And is he whispering somewhere else? So you're probably better bringing people in, and you didn't bring them in for the sake of you bring them in. You bring them in because they're all good. They all work hard and genuine, and I think Dennis, and that's what York City had when the coaching staff was there. And I think Marley, I might be wrong, did Marley go to Kuwait in '86? Yeah, I think he went to Kuwait, yeah. He left.
A year earlier, wasn't it?
But they're all great, and I was pleased from, I sometimes wonder, wish he didn't take me. No.
Well, I was just about to say that you continued with Bobby Saxon, which must have been another part of your education, because you were still quite a young coach at that point.
Yeah, but Bobby came in the first day, and there was a lot left, and he came in, he asked to see me. I went in and had a chat. He said, "Oh, we'll do this and do that, and I'll speak to you after." I said, "Yeah, no problem." He said, "Well, we'll get them all together," and he says, "Then we'll probably have somebody 10 aside, just have a look at them." And I think there was 5 pros at the time. I said, "You've only got 5 players. The rest are just kids. The rest are just scholars we've just brought in." And, and they might have been, at that time, there might have been Chris Tate, who came to Sunderland, and Jonathan Greeny was coming through, and Murty was coming. There's a few, they were maybe a little bit earlier, but Bobby had a big steel and borrow on trying to bring players in and go on other people's opinions. He just didn't have the time. I think that was the main thing. He had to get a team. He had to get a team of players before the season started, and he only had 5. And he tried his socks off. Honestly, he worked hard. He was phoning people up, and he was good to me. I had no complaints at all, and because it is difficult, because when somebody comes in, they want to change it all, and I just joined. But he was brilliant, Bob, and I did feel really sorry for him, because all the better players, you would say, all the big players had gone. I think Keith gone, Bernie had gone, Monty, Allen, they'd all gone. There were about 7 or 8 of them had gone. And some of their contracts, the other ones that maybe didn't get contracts. So it was a really precarious time for Sacco. And for me, he tried his hardest, and unfortunately, the quality from what people were used to seeing wasn't there. I think that was it.
Yeah, and that, like you said, all of those players left, and the majority of them went to Sunderland, actually. But it wasn't until about it was about 7 years later that you ended up being appointed as youth team coach, and Denis Smith had long gone at Sunderland by this point. We were under Mick Buxton in 1994, and you kind of took it on from a kind of couple of institutions, really, in Jimmy Montgomery and George Hurd, who'd done it for quite a few years before that. And it was a strange time just after the 94-95 season had started. It kind of got underway. So how did that job offer come about? And was it a no-brainer at that point? Because you'd been at York for probably about a decade by that point.
Yeah. I think the main thing, Chris, was that sometimes you're at a club, you have become part of the furniture. You're just there, and we brought some really good players. Richard Trestle they sold. Nick Culkin went to Man United for 1.6. Greeny went to Man United 1.6. Murty went to Reading for 3/4 $250,000. And then I hadn't signed a contract for 5 years. I just hadn't signed a contract. And, and I thought, and the final year we were top of the Northern Intiers, because, these players had played and were winning everything. Darren Williams, there was another prime example. A player we brought in from Mask, and you go there, and then I came in on a Friday. We were playing Hull away on the Saturday, if you remember, and Douglas Craig, it changed completely. Where Michael Sinclair was for me, was a fantastic chairman. Douglas Craig came in. I don't think he was aware of what we did or what the people that worked for us for nothing did. I don't think he knew that. And then, so I came in after training. It was about 1:30. He pulled me in the secretary's office with Keith, and he said to me, "Just to let you know, there's been a little bit of interest from Sunderland for you." I says, "All right, okay then." But he says, "I've told him you're happy here." I said, "Oh, hold a minute here. Hold a minute. What do you mean I'm happy here?" I says, "You haven't offered me a contract in 7 years. And you're now making a decision for me to say I'm happy and I've signed a contract." So I've not signed a contract. Never ever signed a contract here. So I says, he says, "Well, I've told him you're not interested." I said, "Let me think about it." So we went to Hull, beat them 4, came back. On the Monday, I went in to see him. And I said, "I'd like to talk to Sunderland. I'd like to talk to Mickey Buxton. I think it's another step in the direction I want to go to." And to be fair to Mick, he phoned me up on the Monday. And I think he invited me to a Central League game. It was at Roker, and it was, I'm sure it was Liverpool. And it was like 6 o'clock at night, so I got to there and I met him in the boardroom at Roker, walked up the stairs and bent round to the right. And he got talking about his insoles, these Japanese magnetic insoles. I'm not thinking to myself, "I've got a loony here." I'm want to talk about football and all that. He's thought, "They're fantastic. I've got a bit of gout and they're great for me and all that." Right, okay, and he said, "I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take you to Charlie Hurley Centre, the training grounds." So I went, "Yeah, okay. We got there. It was pitch black. I saw the gate, seen the gate, and they said to me, 'There's where we train.' Well, I couldn't see any pitches. I couldn't see at all. We couldn't get access into the training ground. I thought, oh my God. So came home. He phoned me on the Wednesday. I watched the game, finished watching the game, went home, and said, "Look, this is what we're off you. Are you interested?" I said, "Yeah, I'll come. I'll come. You need to speak to Douglas Craig, give him courtesy." And so Douglas brought me in the following day and offered me a bigger pay rise, which I said to him was too late. And I wanted to go to Sunderland. I'd made up my mind. I thought I'd done my time there. But I spoke to Denis and Viv and all them. They said what a lovely place it was, to work, and the fans were great and the people in general were great and the staff were great. And it proved they were. But the biggest problem I had was when Mick left, Peter Reid came in.
Yeah.
And this was in the summer. And I'm thinking, my God, I've just came here, and as a new manager. And God, what's going to happen? Basically, you don't worry about that.
Yeah.
And to be fair to Bobby Saxton came.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was the same day, maybe a couple of Bobby came in and they pulled me and they said to me, "Ricky," I went, "Yeah, Bobby." He says, "You're okay, don't worry about it." And that was it. And I worked with Monty and I worked with George Herd, and they were lovely people. They were Sunderland through and through, especially Monty. Monty, I had a lot of time for Monty and George. George was a wee bit maybe old school in a sense, but Monty definitely had the club at heart and loved the club, and he's a legend. Monty's a legend, and I learned from him as well. What I had to do, which I didn't realise, I had to do the YT books because I hadn't done them for 6 months. So I had to fill all these YT books up, get them all up to date for us to get placements. Yeah. So I thought, God, it should be landed into this one. But it was really good. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And Peter Reid was very good. And then Brace was excellent. Brace looked after the players and the coaches. He done whatever he could for you. If he had a problem, he really didn't have a problem. And just things like that. And Paul Brace will speak at a high level. And so is Peter Reid. And Saka is probably one of the best coaches I've ever seen working, to be honest with you.
Are all batteries the same? That's like asking if all soccer players are the same. Take Messi, the most decorated player ever. Is there any other player who has achieved that? No, just him. Now take Duracell. Is there any other battery with power boost ingredients inside? No, just Duracell. Remember, goats only trust goats because they're built different. And Messi only trusts Duracell.
Tomorrow morning is knocking. Stock your fridge now. How about a creamy mocha frappuccino drink? Or a sweet vanilla? Smooth caramel maybe? Or a white chocolate mocha? Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Find Starbucks Frappuccino drinks wherever you buy your groceries.
We have the tech to get food delivered in 15 minutes, but we all have horror stories about buying tickets. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage. Get amazing tickets in just a few taps. Fees are included, so what you see is what you pay. And the Game Time guarantee means authentic tickets at the best price every time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets to concerts, sports, comedy, and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app and create an account for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply.
Yeah, a complete, someone who's, for working behind the scenes, a complete legend at Sunderland. But actually, it's funny because we talked to, some players about coming through at Sunderland about that time of, we talked to people like Martin Smith and, people like that, Darren Holloway, and they all talk about Jimmy Montgomery and George Hurd, that at that point being really tough to come through. It was kind of, they were really tough coaches. But like you said, I mean, Peter Reid came in, completely changed. Just kind of, it almost just kind of, just his presence kind of lifted the club up. But I imagine from your point of view, after being given the nod to say, keep doing what you're doing or whatever. But I imagine it still took, kind of a new management team, Peter Reid, a while to sort out a new outlook and kind of strategy for a youth system at Sunderland. So were you just given a free license to crack on with it? Or did they kind of sit down with you? Because they had 7 games and that was the first summer. So did he already have something in mind for how we wanted to do things, or did you just kind of crack on with it?
I just what we did on the pre-season, we all joined together on the pre-season. We did this sort of 10 by 10 and sometimes 20 by 20 boxes, and it was all fun and games, which was a bit different, and they did the running and all that. But Sacco said, and so did Reid, said it, make it enjoyable. Make sure that every day is different, so Tuesday's not a running day. It might be something else. They're expecting a running day, but change it, and make it interesting and get this thing about, the same as Man United was. When I went to Man United, I was told that just make sure they come in and they want to enjoy what they do and let them show what they've got, let them show their ability they've got. And really would come to the game. Sacco would be a little bit more constructive with me, maybe pull me aside and he'd ask about the players and how they're doing. And I think really his thoughts were really mainly on the first team, getting that going. And for me, they let me go on with it, in a sense. And then they'd ask for players. They said to me, same as Sir Alex Ferguson asked me, if they wanted a player over, which player deserved to go over? Not what you probably find is it. A manager will shout, Ricky, bring so-and-so over, and you think, God, he's been crap all week. He shouldn't go over. Well, they said to me, bring a player over that deserves to be over. But for me, Saka was very interested in Peter. Obviously, had the interest, but his main thoughts were towards the first team.
Yeah. Yeah, and it wasn't long after that summer, I think it was maybe a year later or so, when Pop Robson was brought in as director of youth. I mean, he's always had a fantastic reputation as a coach. He was at Leeds. I think he was at Manchester United as well. I mean, so was that kind of a big step when Sunderland brought him in as director of youth as well?
Yeah, Pop was a gentleman, really good coach and lovely man, and spend time and obviously he had a happy feeling about him. And he brought in Jim Hagan, one of the scouts from Man United, who was fantastic as well. And I think eventually brought in Jed McNamee as one of the sort of academy coaches. But Pop was good. We had a good chat. I knew Pop. I actually sort of knew Pop through the circuit. I'd met him and I'd spoken to him, and he's a legend. Again, he's a legend, Pop. But very quiet man, gets on with the job, and then lets him deal with it, But then he mapped out the scouting, what we needed to do, and we used to go together, the three of us, whether it's me, Jim, and Pop. Every time we'd go and watch games in Ireland and things like that. But Pop had ideas he was bringing in from Manchester United as well, about the technical side and the ball side, and focusing a lot on their weaknesses. Like Kevin Kelly. I remember Kevin being there. We did a lot of footwork with Kevin. he was like Herman Munster when he came. But yeah, he was awful. But we used to put a rapid foot movement for him up at the top, and new ideas. So it did work for us.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was funny. I was looking back, and it's funny because during the Denis Smith years, this whole kind of list of players came through the ranks. Going back to kind of Kieran Brady and David Rush and Brian Atkinson, whole host of players came through under Denis Smith. Then there was a couple of 2 or 3 years where it was quite it was only Michael Gray came through, Martin Smith. I mean, fantastic players, but we didn't have the numbers that we had during Denis Smith's years. And then suddenly it kind of popped up again around the time when Peter Reid came in, because in his first season, Sam Easton broke through, Darren Holloway got a chance, Michael Bridges obviously, made that unbelievable breakthrough. I mean, did you see straight away that we had a few that had a chance?
Yeah, I think they were given the opportunity, and then what they did, and again, like I said, two of them, Peter and Saka, was it they picked the right time for him to go in to the squad, and they probably changed with the first team as well quite a bit, which don't get as nervous. And one of the things, like, this is a big Man United thing that when the manager used to say to you, which player should go over? He's come over for 2 weeks. So he'd go over for 2 weeks. So Bobby would say he's going over for 2 weeks, and let's see how he deals with it when he comes back. If he's Billy Big Time and he's beyond us now, and how he deals with it. And then we'd speak to him before he went. You're going for 2 weeks, and then he's going to test you. You're going to play in the reserves, and things like that. But I just think everything, about it was, and to be fair, Chris, he probably got the back in the club as well. From the chairman and all that. You bring in a new manager and new staff and all that, you've got to back him. And then on the youth side, Darren came and Bridges was a fantastic get from us, because I've actually got a photo on my Instagram account where we signed his first contract, and he's as young as anything, and but what a player. What an exceptionally good player, and it's things sometimes when sometimes names bring people to the club, especially the management side. Peter Reid and maybe Sacco, and then there was also, Pop as well, Pop Robson. That sometimes brings people to the club.
Yeah. I mean, just on the subject, just quickly about Bridges, you said, fantastic signing, but I mean, when he first came on, there was this little bit of a buzz around him. And I remember seeing him when he first came on as so, and you saw him and you thought, blimey, he's kind of 6 stone wet through. But I mean, the management team, the likes of yourself, must have just seen straight away what a talent he was to throw him in when he looked. If you just looked at him, he looked like he couldn't handle first team football. Imagine a big centre half coming through the back of him. But I mean, God, he didn't have the talent to kind of to turn up and grab a goal.
Yeah, he was definitely lightweight, and then obviously we're doing some work on that. But what Bridges had is really good intelligence on. If you looked up as a football player, it gave you 3 options. Some would only give you 1 option, and you might get a second one. But you wouldn't. Bridges would give you 3 options. He'd go away, come down short, he'd come off at an angle, things like that. And he would take the ball with people behind him. But he was clever enough to shift it. He knew when that ball came, he knew roughly what he was going to do with it. And he'd always, we'd just say to him, try and play the opposite the defender wants you to do. So he might want you to show you on the line, go the other way. Always do the opposites, if you can. If he shows you a line, you're clever, then do it. But his touch was fantastic. And then he just had a knack for scoring again, which for forward is out of this world. And Marco had that. But it's just that bravery back to goal when people are there. He's still prepared to take it, but he knows what he's going to do before he receives it. And I think they saw, I can't remember what it sold him, but from my point of view, we'd won argument. I can remember not being happy with him. We went to Doncaster in the Northern Intermediates, and it was him and Darren Holloway, and they were poor, really, really poor. And I can't remember the score, and I gave him a blast, and I said to him that, don't think, that you're going to go in the first team and train with them, and I'm going to have my say and all that about that. And sod's law, I got a phone call about 20 minutes later from Peter Reid saying, can we get Darren Holloway and Michael Bridges to meet us next time? I thought, oh, shit. I thought, oh no, I'm telling the other players, you've got to do the business and all that. I said, these two have just absolutely mucked around today, done sod all, and you always expect, but I suppose that happens. They can't produce the goods, but I thought I says to think who I was with, maybe Paul. I thought, oh God, Paul, what am I doing? This is all happened, what? Don't worry about it.
Yeah.
So I get my right roasting. I was in the dressing room looking at me, and then about 20 minutes later, away with the first team. Oh well, it was life, innit? I thought, well, I'll have a go on Monday.
Yeah. Well, you can picture it as some fantastic reverse psychology there. Give them a blast.
Yes.
But I mean, after that, I mean, Peter Reid, we got relegated, obviously, but the club really just kind of went from strength to strength. We just kind of took off. Peter Reid was kind of bringing, the transfer record seemed to be going year after year. But at the same time, that first season, those young players came through. We had a small squad. We needed that kind of additional help from the young players. But after that, when you start bringing those players in, and then you've got players knocking on the door, like, Paul Thurwell was for a few years. We had, I could rattle them off: Chris Lumsden, Mark Maley, Thomas Butler, George McCartney, Michael Proctor. You were bringing all these players through. But when the club's doing well, those chances become kind of more limited. How difficult does that make your job when there's fewer opportunities for young players in terms of keeping them motivated and keeping them at the club as well?
And then I think it is difficult. You try to keep them there up at the top in a good physical condition, and having that belief the door open again. I think that's a big thing. But I think with the players, we spoke to them and said to them, your chance will come, but you have to. At that time, you have to be ready for it. And that means you have to train well, you have to play games. The great thing, and again, Pop brought this in, was the loan system. The loan system, in the sense that we had to get players to play higher in the Central League at the time. So they had to go out and loan. But one of the stipulations we should have put in is that they had to play the games. With a lot of the clubs out, bigger clubs have been tend to say, okay, you can take so-and-so, but you've got to play them. You've got to play them the 90 minutes, you've got to play them 75. And they watch, so in my age, we used to watch 19 players. We'd watch them all, see how they're doing. But, they go away and you probably find sometimes they get dropped or they're not quite ready for it. Well, you took them in loan. You took them in loan to play them, not to sit on the bench or to have another number. So we had to make sure that when we did send them out loan after maybe a year or so, that they were going to play football to benefit them, to get them a career in football. I would think sometimes you go to reserve games, it's a social thing for scouts to have a chat with each other. How have you been? What have you done? And not really watched the game, and, so you're having to say to them, like, go on loan, it's a great little move, and you thoroughly enjoy it, if anything. And some of them, you'd say some of them, they'd been into Peter Reid's them, and they say to me, what's he want? And I said, I think it's about send you out on loan. I'm not going on loan. I said, you will be. Don't you worry about that. You will be going out on loan. 5 minutes later, I went, when you going? I'm going today, right? Okay. I said, it's great for you. It'll be great for you. It'll play in a good standard of football. I says, what it will do to you is when people look at your record, they'll give you games. I played 40 games for so-and-so or 30 games for so-and-so. So you've got experience. Where some of them will say, what experience he's got? He's played 30 games for reserve game. Yeah, but I mean, what experience he's got? He hasn't got any full league, so that side of it comes into it. But it's some of them, you have to say to them, like, when you go to a club, stay at the club. Although you're a Sunderland player, you're not really a Sunderland player. You say it was Hull. We've done a deal with Hull in York, say with Michael Proctor. Great. Michael went to York. Okay, you go there, you train every day. You don't come back and train here because you're your loan club, and give it everything you get. And then we'll follow you, we'll speak to you. We'll get in touch with you, see how things are. Now's your digs and things like that. So they're okay that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and then a few years later, I mean, you make the step up to take in the reserve team. And it's amazing to say now, and probably, younger fans might not quite believe us when we say that for reserve games at the Stadium Light, we were getting 30,000 for reserve games during that kind of period. I mean, the club was just unbelievable. It was only going in one direction. It was an amazing time to be a Sunderland fan. But it looked, under kind of Peter Reid and Bobby Saxton, it just looked like everyone was in it together. I mean, was it just a great time to be involved in the club, working behind the scenes? Because we had some great characters at the club throughout that whole period as well.
Oh, no, you don't have to tell me. I know that. Yeah, I can remember the reserve team. I think it was Alex Ray and Nicky Summerby was playing, and John Mullen maybe at the time, and to drive them on, because they weren't happy about the first team, and I remember Nicky Summerby coming on a Saturday morning. He used to say to me every Saturday morning, he says, Ricky, no, sorry, Friday, he says, I won't be in tomorrow. I said, oh, why is that, Nicky? I've got a funeral. This was the first time I went, yeah, okay, no problem at all. And really went, who's in tomorrow? I said, oh, Nicky's not here, he's at a funeral. He went, oh, okay, that's fine. Then next Saturday, he came and said it again. So I gave him a benefit of doubt. And then the third Saturday came again. I thought, all right, okay, then. I said, I'm going to tell you something, Nicky. He went, I said, I would be hating to be related to you the way things are going on your side of the family. So, but to be fair to him, I used to say to him, look, come and train, do a wee bit extra Friday, train Friday. I'll give you a wee bit extra, a wee bit running, a wee bit with the ball work and all that. You can have Saturday off. I don't mind that, because you're a senior player and I have to trust you. Alex would be the same, but not as Alex would come in. You just didn't know what Alex Ray's temper would be. Who he was and how he was fixed, and I think, oh God. But I used to say to him before the game, he used to be moaning, I should be in the first team, I should be doing this. And I said, okay, then I said, look, I should get a sheet of paper, and I said to him, look, there you go. All these ones are not happy. There's 30 scouts watching you tonight. So you got a choice. Either go, muck around, they don't bother you, or if you want to move, you've got a great chance of getting the move if you do the business tonight. And to be fair to him, Chris did. He had no complaints. But, some days you come in and they weren't well for training. I'd have to say to him, go in and get yourself injured. You pulled your hamstrings. I'd bring him out, train him for a couple minutes, say, go and see the physio and just see your thighs tight. So just little things like that. But, they were good. They were really good. And then I helped them as much as I physio had because at the end of the day, they're senior players. And, and they look at the first team and think, I should be playing the first team. And there's probably somebody in there better than them. But there was some odd and strange things we had to do with them to pacify them. But in general, they were really good.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you've done all that with the kind of young players, and you can obviously see young players develop and all this sort of stuff. Was that a step you wanted to take with the reserve team? Because it sounds like more kind of man management, kind of aggravation rather than developing players.
Yeah, I mean, it was a form of development in a sense, but the sense that possibly I would know what's coming through the youth side, but there's a different way to treat a young player to treat a senior pro, and you can say a senior pro and you say to him, look, maybe if you consider doing this, don't say, I want you to do that, because it'd chew my head off. They'd tell me, go and I've won so many medals. So I try to do that. But most of them were decent. I didn't have any. I had a bit of laugh, a bit of banter with them, but I got to know them because previously they were mainly always with the first team. And Bobby would say, look, you've got 5, but they play in the reserves on Monday or Thursday. And I said, oh yeah, that's fine, Bob, but you're going to stop the progress of these 5 young boys we're playing. So what I'd say to the senior players, I said, go out there. And I know you're not happy being here. I know that. I know when Bobby turns around and says, you 5 are playing tonight, you're not happy. I know that. But what you have to remind, you're stopping somebody else's career by taking their position tonight. And then, so go and do the business, then get yourself in the first team. Then I can bring this young player, and the young player can see how professional you are and your mannerism and how disciplined you are. And they were, to be honest with you. So there was that side as well. But it's that fear of progression that your reserves gets choked up with senior players, that you're stopping maybe, you see your Tommy Butlers, your Brendan McGills, your Kevin Kyles, you're stopping all them coming up. And they're ready to come up. And the other ones are probably ready to go in the first team or leave, basically, But no, I mean, I still keep in touch with Alex, who's fantastic. I do speak to Alex through Instagram and all that. And he was great to be around. He was funny and great. And but he'd sometimes play in your sympathy a little bit. But every time he played, he did the business. That's what I can say. So there was that side of it.
Yeah. And then in October 2002, it kind of, after a year or so, you could see things were breaking up. And then, and like I said, in October 2002, Peter Reid was sacked and we appointed Howard Wilkinson. And then about a month later, if you thought managing the Sunderland reserve team was difficult, you get the job to take the Manchester United reserve team. And they're at the height of their powers almost. They won the Premier League 7 out of their previous 10 seasons. It was only 2 years or 3 years, I think, after they completed the treble. I can't imagine that was a difficult decision to make, especially because almost that golden period at Sunderland had kind of come to an end at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was happy, Chris, with Howard and I can't remember his assistant now.
Steve Coppell.
Steve Coppell. I was happy with it because they brought me more into the first team, and I became sort of training with them. And we actually played Manchester United on the Thursday, and I was talking to Mick Phelan before the game, and he was just saying, "Look, I'm really tired, and I'm doing a lot of jobs." And I said, "Well, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I do the first team, and I'm having to do the reserves because they're trying to get a reserve coach in." So I went, "All right." So, and normally, Chris, I don't tend to phone people. I just think, I'll send a CV in, and if I get it, I get it. If I don't, but I phoned a friend of mine's, and I says, "Look, it was Mick that I'm known really well, and I'm known since the early part, maybe 94s." And I said to Mick, "Could you find out?" He was an agent. I said, "Could you find out if Man United are doing interviews for for the reserve team job?" So he says, "Would you be interested?" I said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind not having a chat." So he came back next day and he says, "Yeah, they've done 3, and you can have yours on Thursday." I went, "Oh God, bloody hell." I said, "That'd be nice." He said, "Yeah, Sir Alex Ferguson will talk to you on the Thursday about it." So I got up at, God, I think it was half 4 in the morning. I didn't meet him at 6:30 at Carrington. But the strange thing was, we're off in the morning at Sunderland and training in the afternoon. So went and spoke to him. I had about 2 hours with him. He knew everything about me, Chris. Knew everything about where I came from, my background, my family, my career. He mentioned Jonathan Greening. He mentioned Nick Culkin, who was sold for 3.2 million. We'd actually played Manchester United, was at York City in the FA Youth Cup. It may have been near enough the quarterfinals. They beat us 5-0 at Old Trafford with all the big names. And he came and he says, "Look, well done." He says, "We thought you'd decline, just kicked us." I just said, "Well, no, I try and play football. Well, maybe not technically as good as you, but we do try, I thought of maybe taking them up another level." So had my interview, said to me, "I've got one interview to do on the Friday, then I'll give you a phone." Well, we went to Liverpool, and I think we drew 0-0. Yeah, I think we drew 0-0 at Liverpool. They had about 70 shots of goals or 60, and we had 1. And it was backs against the wall, and I was on the bus. I was pleased as punch. Couldn't get away with it. You think, God Almighty, but we got away with it, and they deserved it. Players, they deserved the luck and all that. And then I was come off at Billingham. I packed my car up there, and I got this call, and it's a private number. I normally don't answer no call numbers or private numbers. I don't tend to do it, and I answered it, and it was Sir Alex Ferguson. He says, "The job's yours. I'll see you Tuesday." All right, but I knew we were off Tuesday. I went, "Yeah, okay then." So on the Sunday, I phoned up my friend. I said, "What did I ask for?" He said, "Yes, he gave us all these figures. What did I ask for?" And so I went on the Tuesday to see him again. It was early. It was about 6:30. Didn't really actually discuss the contract. He just said to me, "That was it. There's your contract. There's what we pay. Here's the incentives. And things like that." There was less of us on at Sunderland. So I thought, all right, okay. But, and I says to him, "Is that negotiable?" He went, "No, bloody ain't negotiable." He didn't say that. He said it before. I went, "Aye, okay." That's fine. So I'm driving back up. I'm up at first from Manchester. So it must be something like 10:30. I'm driving up there, and a phone call from their press at Sunderland to say, "Oh, hi, yeah." I said, "Hi, all right." He says, "I see you've joined Man United." I says, "What?" I says, "No, I haven't joined Man United." I says, "Oh, Sir Alex Ferguson's put it in and the ability to you join him as a reserve team coach." I thought, "Oh, God." I hadn't told Howard. So I said, "I'll be there in about an hour and a half." So I got there. I seen Howard. He was as good as gold. He says, "Yeah, I can understand. Not a problem. We'd like to keep you." But I says, "Look, they say I've got to spend more time, give you more notice." He says, No, you can leave today. You take your stuff. You've done brilliant for us and brilliant for the club." And so that was it. Basically, that was it. And then So I phoned Sir Alex on the Tuesday, said everything's been done, the club have been trying and all that, no compensation, nothing at all. They were happy with that. And they went, okay, I'll see you in a week's time, have a week off. I went, oh, okay, just had a week off. Had a week off. I didn't know what to do. We'd actually just had moved house. So I done that, and then I went in and Brian McClare was there. Jim Ryan. Brian McClare was fantastic. What a mentor for me he was. And then I changed. My whole thought of football changed completely. How I seen myself, how I seen the players. You know, I can remember one afternoon we were doing set plays. He says, look, they've got to be out every day. They go to college on a Monday afternoon out, Tuesday 2 periods, Wednesday the same, Thursday the game at night, train on Thursday morning, then Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I went, okay, so we did all that. And I'm doing these set plays one day, and Brian came over, Brian McClare, says, what are you doing? I said, I'm doing some set plays. He went, nah. He said, we don't do set plays here, Ricky. I went, okay, so what do we do? He said, we'll just go to Chris Eagles. You can do it, or Kieran Richardson, or listen, with Gerard Piqué at 16, to Gerard Piqué and Giuseppe Rossi and Fraser Campbell and Johnny Evans. And we had 31 pros, they all signed professional, they all made careers out of it. But Brian and I were in charge of elite players. So they were anything from 16 to probably 19. Sylvan Blake. Who else were they? Paul McShane. Funny enough, Paul McShane, you know, and three centre backs were Paul McShane, Gerard Piqué, and Johnny Evans. So
Wow.
I can remember Paul, meant to say to you, I can remember Paul coming to Sunderland and says, Paul, what makes you a better coach than me? You know, I says, how do you do it? He says, Ricky, you're only as good as the quality of your coaching. He said to me. That's what he said to me. He says, in Man United, you've got quality. This is when he came into Sunderland. And it's always stuck with me. And I went there and I lost my first 7 games. I was the first coach ever at Man United's history to lose the first 7 reserve games. So I think I remembered from the gaffer mentioned it to me a couple of times. I tried to keep out his weight. And he says, don't worry. He says, next year you've got a team. He says, you have got a team. And we did have a team. And, you know, you think, God, but just everything about the place, it was so simple. There was nothing different, except they had quality players. There was nothing different at all, Chris. At all with it. It was just football. We did do this special running, which wasn't great. They had wasn't as much as we'd probably do at Sunderland and all that. Everything was with the ball. It had to be in really tight areas. It had to be quick, sharp, get your mind going, 2 touch, 1 touch. And sometimes you could just leave them, Chris, and talk about something else, and they'd just carry on. Just carried. When Giuseppe Rossi was out of this world. I mean, he was out of this world, and so was Gerard Piqué. He liked to play a bit deep, Gerard. We pushed him up a little bit with Johnny Evans. You think we an open edge reserve team, the 2 centre backs were 16, 17. You know, and they handled it. Just handled it. The team with, you know, Davy Jones, who went to Burnley, Tom Heaton was a keeper. You know, and you think, God almighty, you know, it just went on and on. It was like just another world you're in. You know, you just thought, God almighty, and they wanted to train, they wanted to be the best. And then I remember the manager come over saying to me, Ricky, we need a couple of players for tomorrow. And the manager say, I want so-and-so and so-and-so. He'd go, I need a midfield player and a centre forward. Send me the ones that deserve to go over. So I'd say to him, right, he's over. And that's the first time, really. Bobby did that. Bobby Saxon did it. But to emphasise even more, you know, Sir Alex had done it. And that was completely new. And he used to come up. He used to start, you'd be coaching or doing something. He used to just be there. You think, God, how's he gone there? How's he seen it? And you say, it's going well. No, and they'd test you. They'd test you little things. Oh, the team played well. No, I remember Brian McClare saying to me, I'll test you, Ricky. Well, okay. We were having lunch, breakfast one day, and he's sitting opposite, and Brian's beside me. We played Walsall. We drew 4-4 at Walsall. I think it was in January or February or something like that. But the first team were away to Fenerbahce, I think it was. So he took about 9 of the reserve team with him and played them. Played them. And then, so I had like Phil Pickett, who was my centre back, who was 5'5". And we got in Ramon Calise and, you know, and they had Vassell playing and a couple other big names, the German midfield player they'd playing. And we got 4-4 at Walsall, funny enough. Next day he says, it's not really one police played well for you. And Chalky just kicked me. And I says, and it just clicked into my head again. I said, yeah, he did okay, Gaff. I don't think he was the best. He went, yeah, I don't think he was the best, but he did okay for you. And that was it. So, but he was fantastic, because, you know, of all my career, he's the best I've ever worked under. Really, I mean that, the best ever to learn from. And Mick Phelan was there, and he was different class as well. And Brian McClare was my mentor. He looked after me. And I think the following year we took two teams in the Pontins, and we took two teams in the Barclays, and we won all the trophies. Won in that year 8 or 7 out of 8. We won. But we had a team. My God, we had a team. You know, and but we coached them. I think for the first 3 months, we didn't get an afternoon off. We worked Saturday, Sunday, worked every day, and that was new, because at Sunderland I'd probably get a Sunday off and a Wednesday off.
Yeah.
That was no chance at Man United. Then I got a day off, and I gave him a day off. We'd lost to Man City the night before. Then he called them all in, called them all back in. They had to run round the pitch. We lost 3-1. With David May, he gets sent off early, and we lost 3-1. Brian McClare says, oh, Gaffer's brought him in. And he says, I'll see you tomorrow. I thought, oh, God. So I went to him, and the honeymoon was over. Does this will be expected? That's not acceptable. You know, you're better than that. And if you've got a day off planned, you don't think you deserve it, don't give him it. And, you know, I was thinking about me having a day off, not. No, he was as good as gold. He was as good as gold. The best I've ever been able to learn from. And the players, the example of the players with Ronaldo at the time, Van Nistelrooy, my God, we used to send the players over to sit and watch them sometimes. If they trained a bit longer than us, just to see what they do and what's expected from them. And it was out of this world.
Yeah.
Good times. But I'm a boy from a massive council estate in Glasgow, Castlemilk, and I'm thinking to myself, my God, you know, I'm in Man United now. I'd never ever dreamed that in my life, you know, and it's the first time ever I phoned somebody for a job. I've never done it. Because I always feel as if I owe somebody. I've never done it. He was a good pal of mine, and he managed to get me an interview.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, I mean, taking all that into account, fantastic time, fantastic people, fantastic education. It was kind of only really 3 years later when you joined Sam Allardyce at Bolton Wanderers as first team coach, which, you know, you've just talked about, you know, that you were learning on the job all the time. You were taking these fantastic players. So was that all about the opportunity to work with Sam Allardyce taking that job?
Yeah, I think it was something to do with where I came from as well, to think it might be the only opportunity I have to work with a first team in the Premiership. You know, you don't know at Man United, you know, if you are going to move up on that, you know, and I thought, well, I'll take, I suppose it was a gamble, because deep down I didn't want to leave Man United. I just didn't want to leave them, because I loved it so much, you know, and I enjoyed everything about it. But I thought, I need to test myself, and there's not every day a manager phones you up and says he wants you to go and train the first team in the Premiership. So, and a boy from Castlemilk, and, you know, where I've been to where I am now, I've been really lucky and fortunate, to be truthful with you, you know, and I took the risk. I mentioned it to Sir Alex. He wasn't happy. You know, wish I can understand, you know, and but he let me go. You know, I did pay a bit of compensation, but that was just the thought of maybe going up the level and testing myself, Chris, to see if I was up for it, if I could do it. You know, it's not until you get there do you really know, can you do the job? Because it is different from a reserve team and into a first team. Because at that time we had JJ and the Carter, and then we had Driffy, we had Kevin Nolan, Kevin Davis, Delios, Campo. You know, you think, well, you know, this is just a lad that's come in. He's not ever played at this level, and he's telling you, asking you to do a few things different what normally does. But Sam took me because of my development on what I could do below as well for the reserves, and help the reserve coach, which I did. You know, and also helped Sammy Lee. So I was working, and Sammy was the assistant. I was sort of underneath, but helping Sammy as well. So was an opportunity, and I went and spoke to Sam, and he came over really well. I didn't know about Prozone, and because we didn't do it at Man United. Didn't do anything like that at Man United. And then about, scoring first in many games you went, and corners for how important corners were, how important corners against were, and if you scored more goals for corners, and this is a fact, and conceded less goals from a corner, you'd be in the top 8. In these 3 years, we were in the top 8. So it was a completely different structure from what it was Manchester United.
Yeah, was that because I read Sam Allardyce's book, and he talked a lot about his kind of war room that he had at Bolton, where it was all set up. And I mean, were you part of that? And did you see how that worked?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big circular table. Sam was like king at the top. He was like that. And then we had to do on the Monday. So they played Saturday. The Monday afternoon, we had to do write down what we thought of the game. We wrote stuff down that we thought and what went well, what didn't. Because he said, and in the war room, we had an opinion. We could say anything we wanted in the war room. It would stay in there. Because what Sam said, he said, there's a lot of things in the game that I wouldn't think of or haven't seen that you might see. So, we'd have an opinion, and I can remember sitting there, and there's me, Sammy Lee, there's Jimmy Phillips, obviously Sam, but there's other people. There was a kit man. There was a kit man and the laundry man, and thinking, I'm thinking, the academy director, the academy coach. I'm exaggerating with the laundry man. He wasn't there, but the rest were there. And then the kit man piped up, started talking away, and I'm thinking to myself, God, what's happening? But he picked, Russell was good. Russell played at Blackpool and that, so Russell had a football background, and he would probably see things different from us. So Russell had his sailor. I thought we were crap today. I thought he was shite. I don't think he did this well. And then, so he'd write all that down. I don't know what he did with it. He'd just say, I always make the decision, they're final. But sometimes they would just go, they would do like, they'd speak to the player over the international window, find out everything about him, all his cuts and parts, how's he doing, how's his wife, when's the last time he'd been for holiday, once he'd been away. Because you think there was a lot of French ones. Yeah. I mean, with Nicholas Anelka, and when with Borghetti, a Mexican centre forward, there was I'm trying to think who the Japanese ones, Nakata, I think it was.
Yeah.
Maybe Nakata. There was 18 different nationalities, all speaking English. I don't think, God almighty, but he had 18 players. That's all he had. And then when Vast Hayes came into the scene, and it was just complete. I mean, I can remember going to Man United and watching a cup game. It might have been a league game with West Brom, and 4 players were playing. I got invited, and we went into the video room before the game. They talked about West Brom, but he talked all about Man United and showed 3 clips of West Brom. Well, Sam, we'd watch the 90 minutes, and half of them were falling asleep. Jiffy was falling asleep. Jaddy at the back would be falling asleep. Meti was. I was falling asleep. So I'm thinking, God, I went it's 90 minutes then. But it was completely different way of thinking. But for Bolton, it worked. It was really successful.
Yeah.
Starting a business can seem like a daunting task, unless you have a partner like Shopify. They have the tools you need to start and grow your business. From designing a website to marketing to selling and beyond, Shopify can help with everything you need. There's a reason millions of companies like Mattel, Heinz, and Allbirds continue to trust and use them. With Shopify on your side, turn your big business idea into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Well, I mean, I think it was a couple of years later after that. I think 2007 when Sam Allardyce left and he was replaced with Sammy Lee. And then in the following November, Roy Keane kind of gives you a call to take on the job as Sunderland first team coaches. I mean, we started life as a Premier League club after getting promoted at that point. But did you know Roy Keane pretty well from your time at Manchester United, or did that just come out of the blue?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't normally speak to, they sort of separated, they were there, and you wouldn't go in the first team dressing room, and you'd have to chat the door and get the okay to go in. You might have to go, the gaffer wants to see somebody, but you would never go in. that was their sort of the area. That was their zone. You weren't allowed in that. Was the players' zone. Roy, the end of the year I was there, he used to come in and asked us to could he come in and listen to us before the game, half time and after the game when we played, in the league. And sometimes you would see him after the game, or he maybe mentioned something the day after. But he came in for a little while just to see what we were saying and what points we were picking up. And he would disagree with some of the stuff. That was fine. But I didn't really know him. I may say hello to him. That as far as I can. The for me, go to Sunderland was really John Cook, the kit man. I don't know if John's still there, but
no, he's left just recently.
Oh, is it? I've actually, if you got a number, you send me. But Cookie phoned me up. He says, Ricky, Roy wants you to come to Sunderland. I went, all right, okay then. I says, tell me about him. So he told me. I should have stayed. No. No, so that's where it came from. And then I spoke to the secretary at the time in York. And then Niall Quinny phoned me. And there was a wee bit disagreement in the wages. We usually find that if you send somebody from the admin side or the secretary side, he doesn't really know who he's talking to, and he's not so sure about this and that, and he's got a set figure in his head, and I've got a set figure that I think I'm worth. There wasn't a lot between us. He went, oh, no, I don't think so. So, okay, leave it. Just stay in Bolton. That's basically what I said. So, Quinny phoned up, so don't worry, it's all been done. It's done and dusted. So, I came and I looked after the defence and the set plays, and Tony was the head coach, and I sort of filled in between them, and Roy was there. So it was good. Really enjoyed it, and I was back to the club that I've always liked. It was something for them, and for my first time there, I probably, if it wasn't Manchester United, Chris, I probably would at that time been still at Sunderland. To be honest with you, I'd probably still be Howard. But at the end of the day, I may have been sacked. But there again, I would probably still be at Sunderland. But it was nice to go back. It was because obviously the back end of the year I left, they had the stadium, the training ground was all there, so everything was in place, for success. And it's it was a great feeling going back. I really enjoyed it. Enjoyed working with Tony, and I enjoyed working with Roy. But. Also knew Cookie, and I knew a lot of people there still. I know, God rest his soul, Tim Carter, who was a fantastic goalkeeper and a lovely friend of mine. So it was Jed McNamee, there was Elliot, people like that. So Bolly was there, which, Mr. Fantastic was there. So it was nice to go back, and it really hadn't changed a little bit. Different philosophy and what he wanted to play, but and different players, but. Yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed it. I got offered, to be honest with you, in the June, previously, I got offered to go back to Bolton on a 5-year contract. They offered me, I was in New Zealand, visiting some friends, and Gary Mixon phoned me up and says, through Chris Evans, he says, when you come back, be head coach, there's a 5-year contract for you. And I mentioned that to Roy. I had a meeting with Roy in back end of June. And just said, I need to do more, I'm hungry to do more, and sometimes, that I'm not doing it as much as I want to be doing, and this is all change, change, you've got more of it, and it did a little bit, but I spoke, Quinny phoned me up about that, and said, I want you to stay. I went, okay then, go on then, I don't mind, because when Quinny, you were saying about players, when Quinny and Phillips, and Alex Ray, and people like that, and Quinny was fantastic. And with the spell, we brought a lot of Irish kids, and Quinny was different class for him. We took them out, looked after them, and he was such a gentleman, and he was good with me, I must admit. He was fantastic when I was a coach there. But they were all good, to be honest with you. Quinny, and I thought, the pairing between Quinny and Kevin Phillips was outstanding. A great match. It complemented each other.
Yeah, I think now Quinn persuaded a lot of people to do a lot of things for Sunderland when he was chairman. Including kind of persuading Roy Keane to come in as manager. But obviously you might have seen him from a distance at Manchester United, obviously with being involved in the first team. But I mean, obviously, I imagine you went into it with an open mind, not having worked for him because that was his first job. But was he kind of as you expected? Because I mean, from everything I've read and the things he said as well, he seemed to take kind of a back seat at training and just kind of watch the players from a distance rather than get involved.
Yeah, I mean, Tony was sort of the head coach, so Tony would sit down and discuss it with Neil Bailey. We discussed what we were doing and what we needed to be done up, and Roy did take a background on it. And sometimes he'd join in, and then sometimes he'd stop it and say, "Look, I want you to do this or do that," So his thought in football was very good. He knew, because I mean, they got promotion, didn't they? They came from they're not down at the bottom somewhere, and then all of a sudden they got a promotion, and then he wanted to drive on, and obviously his coaching was good. When he came and coached, he did well. He talked to you, he asked you how the players were. There was always that sort of form of communication with them. But Tony was the head coach. Tony was probably the one that planned the training for that week. And then we'd go from there, basically sort of take it from there. And if I had to do Chabonda and people like that, I'd take them away and do extra with them. Or I'd maybe do Red Chabonda one day doing heading, but he'd had his fear back and we didn't head the ball because it was sore. So we'd just take him off one day. So, but it was fine. It was okay. He was maybe quite a private one as well, and he listen, he was a great player, a fantastic player and great history of playing, and he tried to bring that into Sunderland. He did try to bring it into that. Sometimes you might have, as I said earlier, you might not have the same quality players as what we had at Man United.
You mentioned a couple of players were brought in that summer to try and kick on. I mean, you've been on the training pitch. Did you, because there was all that group of players who kind of brought us up from the Championship, and he kind of tried to, there was a big change over the 1.5 years we were in the Premier League where he really tried to push us on. Did you feel a change on the training pitch when he was bringing those players in, that actually you had to work on that work ethic side as well as, the quality players he was bringing in?
But I think you're trying to bring in a little bit of quality, and the ethic, the work rate in general is fantastic with the players. And then some days there's a little bit of jealousy when you get a number of players coming in, because there's that talk about wages and you don't know. You know nothing what they're earning. I've never even asked them. I wouldn't want to ask them. And they look at it and think, oh God, he must be on a fortune. He's come here, and and sometimes they get resentful. Some players regarding that. But regarding honesty and all that, it was always there. And then but they have a little bit different attitude. Like Jiffy had a different attitude. I knew him at Bolton, and I'd never met Chabonda. I'd heard things about him, and they were a little bit laid back, and we'll do it, and things like that. Where the Collins, and Whitehead, they were grafters, workers, battle for you, every day. The other ones might have thought, well, no, I'm just sit back and I'll protect myself for Saturday, things like that. So there were different nature of people in general, but in general they were fine. They were okay, and Cece was decent. He was decent. He was a prolific goal scorer, and but I think there's always that jealousy. They read things in the papers, and think, oh God, I should be on that, and I'm playing the first team. But it doesn't. Football isn't quite like that.
Yeah. We had a strange kind of mix of players by that second season, and he eventually kind of Roy Keane resigned after a 4-1 defeat at home to Bolton Wanderers. Funnily enough, but I mean, because Ellis Shaw came in before that, and there was always things kind of leaking out, little whispers, little stories, little rumours. But I mean, did you and the rest of the staff? I mean, could you get a feeling things were kind of building up to a point where something might give, or was it just a complete surprise out of the blue when he resigned?
Well, I think for me it was a surprise because he said to us, "We'll see you on the Monday," and I was travelling up, and I think I was probably just going over Middlesbrough Bridge. I was going over there, maybe up that way, and I got a phone call from Tony, and Tony said to me, have you read the paper? He says, no, I haven't read any news anywhere. I've not seen anything at all. He says, just to let you know, Roy's leaving. Well, Roy's left. I went, oh, God. Well, what's caused that? He said, I couldn't tell you. That's what he said to me. So I says, well, I'll be up there. It was about 7 o'clock, so I'll be up there for about maybe touching 8 o'clock and have a chat. So we had a chat, sat down and had a chat. He never explained why he left Tony, because Tony was very close to Roy. And so Tony said, I'll take the training. Yeah, that's fine. And then what do you want to do? And I'll take whatever's left, or do we split them up? And so we organised the training for a couple of days. And then there was always this hope maybe it wasn't true. He was going to just come back. It was just a spur of the moment that he made this decision. But I haven't ever known why. If it was something to be early shot, if he felt as if he came to an end, or the result there on Saturday wasn't a great one for him, and things like that. So, but Tony was he probably knew a little bit more, Tony, because he really was close to Roy. But on that day, we just trained. We just trained as normal. And then I think Niall spoke to Tony. And so I just went home. I went home about 4:30. I'll drive down home. And but still not knowing, why, or, the chairman didn't speak to us about it. We knew Niall come up and spoke to Tony, but that was, I don't know what was said there. I think Niall said to Tony, just continue how it's going, and then we're having a meeting that day. I think they were having. So that was as far as I knew, Chris.
Yeah, and then following Saturday, you're in the dugout opposite Sir Alex Ferguson at Old Trafford, which football always writes these stories, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you're our caretaker manager initially, obviously taking on Manchester United in the Premier League. I mean, was that kind of, because obviously, kind of Tony was there and you were having conversations. I mean, did it seem natural for you initially just to kind of step into that role?
No, not at all. It didn't even come to my mind. I'll be honest with you. I can remember now speaking to him. It could have been, I don't know if it was a Friday or Thursday. I know it was the snow was bad. I can remember that. And then he said, look, we want you to take over till we appoint somebody. So I said to him, what about Tony? Because Tony's the head coach. He says, no, we're spoken to Tony. That's been done. It's we prefer you. And so that's how it was. So we didn't. Chris, the club was in such a state. We didn't have any money and stuff like that. And so we knew at Man United, we trained on the Friday on a 20 by 20 piece of grass because it was snowing. We couldn't do anything else, and we played some games, had a bit of fun, and took the squad down and lost late on. But we survived. We'd done nothing with them. We just had set them out how we thought we needed to play. We tried to force the issue up front, but we couldn't do that because they're such a good team. The movement's great and things like that. I was sitting there with Neil Bailey, and I said to Neil in the dugout, "This is surreal, isn't it?" Because he was my United. Neil was reserved. I said, "You had two of us sitting here, so Alex in the other box, and we're 0-0 with about 7 minutes to go. Would you believe it?" He says, "No, I wouldn't." I said, "Well, that's how things. I mean, that's 1-0, and so now came in after the dressing room, thanked us all, and was a team as pleased as punch. And then they said, "We'll see you Monday," and that was it. So on Monday, and is this KT on for another week? I said, "Yeah, no problem. Yeah, no problem at all." And we went to, I think it was West Brom. I think it might have been West Brom we played, and we won 4-1, and so. I just said to him, one of the biggest problems is managing all the players. We had something like 48 professionals. But what they don't understand, Chris, before we keep buying all these players, is that we can only name 18.
Yeah.
Because we can only play 11. So the rest of them are not going to be happy. What I did say to him, we brought him in and said, "Look, we don't... Unfortunately, in this situation, I don't want to be in this situation." That's what I said to him. I said, "I'm not a manager. I'm not looking forward to doing anything. I'm a coach, and as far as I'm concerned." And then I says, "One thing I can do with you all." He says, "What?" I said, "I can trust you all." But I said, "What you have to realise, I can't pick you all. It's impossible."
Mm.
Some are going to be disappointed, but everybody will get your chance. I'll give everybody a chance. That's as fair as I can be. And I said, I might be only here a week. I might be only here 2 weeks. And then hopefully they'll get somebody else in. Basically. I thought they might have got Big Sam in, to be honest with Sam Allardyce.
Yeah.
But, we got 2 good results. But I never ever thought, I keep saying it. And people say, well, yeah, I've never wanted to be a manager. I know why I took the job. I know that. Now I know why I took the job. At the time, I wasn't even so sure because he'd asked me that many times. I said no to him because I'm not a big name. I'm just a coach. I like to coach. I'm quite prepared to do the caretaker until you get somebody else in. But that's as far as it goes. As far as I'm, and I says if I got to go, I go. Because a new man, I want somebody in. I don't mind that. I don't have a problem with that, Connie.
Yeah. Just out of interest, just going back because obviously that was it was a last gasp injury time winner from Vidic at Old Trafford. But did Alex Ferguson have any kind of words of wisdom after that game?
Yeah, he just said we could have lost 5 or 6, maybe 7. He says to me, he were well drilled. They said he well drilled, and he made it very difficult for us. And what he did say to me, he phoned me up on the Monday or Tuesday. He said to me, "I'll give you one piece of advice." I said, "Well," he says, "Get rid of your bad apples." I said, "Okay." That was it. But we had some. I think we had 48 professors, all on good money, really good money. But that wasn't my job to deal with that. My job is now I'd asked me to do was just to coach them through the week, make it enjoyable, get them prepared for the game, and take it from there. That was it. And keep us up. That's what he said to me. We need points. We need to stay up. That's what he said. And I said, yeah, okay, I'll do my best.
Yeah. Well, like you said, we went to West Brom and won 4-0, went to Hull City, won 4-1. You took us up to 12th from 18th when you took over, just in the space of kind of 3 games. And I remember there was comments after from the players to give you the job. I remember there was a clip on whether it was Match of the Day or Sky when you were doing an interview and the results were going right. I mean, did any of that start to sway you to think, actually, I could have a crack at this, or we all thought always the same?
They're always the same. They're actually the same because when you become a manager, it does change. The players' thoughts of you change completely. When you're a caretaker manager, then everything's fine and great. And we went to Hull, and I can remember Quinny came in just before the game at Hull and says, "Oh, you have to beat this lot." I said, "Well, we're going to try. We're going to try to beat them." He said, "I've had enough upstairs in the boardroom. They're talking about, the Phil Brown philosophy and all that." I went, "Okay, I get the point." So, this is how we should do it. And I know Phil was after the job, and we won 4. CC just did really well for us in that. But there was never a time I ever wanted a job. There was never a time I sat down and thought, I desperately want this job. I didn't want it. I didn't want it because I thought Sunderland needed somebody with a bigger name to attract bigger people to the club. That was always on my mind. I'm just not a nobody. I'm just a person that loves coaching, getting on with it, and I know why I took it because Niall asked me. Niall just said to me, you couldn't take it for me. That's what he said to me. I said, yeah, I will. Okay. And this was after about 2.5 days. He said, it'll give us time. I said, yeah, but now it will change. The whole thought of me will change with the players. Because when you're a caretaker, you're just a caretaker, at the end of the day. And I said, as soon as I come the manager, it's going to change. I'll tell you that now. It'll go the other way. Players have been moaning. We need to get some players in and they're not happy. And I know we sat down and he said, can you give us a list of players we need to keep? So I gave him 28. And that was including Callback and Henderson, Wyclon, and this is the ones we had to sell to bring money into the club, to bring it in, and we couldn't bring anybody else to help us. We just couldn't do that. It was, people don't realise what situation we're in at the time. But so Niall said to me, look, please do it for me. I said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Because I know Niall was Sunderland through and through. And the way I was Sunderland through and through. Chris, I never discussed wages, nothing at all. So I didn't discuss a contract, nothing at all with him. I just got on with the job and tried to keep us up. And that was even, the owner was saying to us, through now, we need to stay up. And that's what we had to do. And it wasn't pretty. We had it. We know that. And the Tottenham game was we were 1-up with Tottenham. We had a minute or so to go, and we carried away. And George McCartney went up for a corner who shouldn't be up there. We told Mal Black to take a shot. He put it in the box, and they went up and scored, and Keane scored. Thought, oh God, that would have been 3 points. That would take us out of the pressure Premiership as well. But it was, even when I took it, and I used to speak to Niall every day, and I said to Niall, no matter what happens now, I'm leaving this summer. So that was, that's where we sort of left it, and I said, I'll promise to do everything I can, the hours to work, and try and bring a couple of new. We got Davenport in, who was a good one. We got Tal Bayem, who was decent, and we got Paul McShane back, who wasn't happy. But Hearts football isn't always happy, and decisions are not always right. And there were decisions I thought were right at the time, but everything was all about staying in and people not losing their jobs. And the staff there, who are known for years, may have possibly lost their jobs as well. And I didn't want that. I just didn't want it. But the players could move, and agents would get them away and sell them and stuff like that. So it was difficult. It was a difficult time.
Yeah. Well, there was also the small matter of a derby against Newcastle at St James's Park, which is, I mean, no matter how you're involved, is always a huge game, obviously, up our way. But from the viewpoint of a manager, how did you find the build-up? Was it just something you couldn't really enjoy and get into just because the pressure's just so big in games like that?
Yeah, I didn't read the papers. I'll be honest with you, I didn't, because I live in York. I got even impressed down here. Didn't really know I did. So I didn't really read the papers, and we had a fair idea what we were going to play. We spoke to Neil and that and discussed it, and I'd never been to Newcastle. Oh no, I had been. Sorry, I'd been, because that was when Kevin Phillips scored the little lob when they won 2-0. I think it was 2-1. But and then we got off to a good start, and then Stephen Taylor went down the Eiffel Tower, and I know Stephen really well, and he said to me after the game, I'm really sorry, Vicky. I said, yeah, it's football. You just got to go on with it. We had a chance with Chopra. It broke through. And they should have squared it better, and they never, I don't think Cameron got a hold of it. But it was the same as Middlesbrough, Chris. We couldn't afford to lose the game. We had to pick up points, which was really important to us. And then we changed the team around, and then there was a couple of injuries and stuff like that. So it was the Newcastle game was the hype of it. What they were going to do is, that they were going to beat us and all that. But we were confident we'd get something from it, and I felt on the day we possibly could have got a win.
Yeah, that like you said, that latest penalty, about 20 minutes left, got them a point. But on the last day of the season, finished 16th in the Premier League. Newcastle were relegated, so one or two celebrations going on. And like you said, you kind of already made your decision up, but I think everything you've said was, at the time you didn't want it. You didn't want to do that. You didn't want to take that step. We're kind of I think we're 10, 11, maybe 12 years on now. I can't quite remember, but is any part of you now look back and think, who knows where it might have went?
No, not at all. When I left, I spoke to Niall and said, look, I'm going to leave now. I said that to you at Christmas time. And he said, have you made up your mind? I said, yeah. I said, you need somebody with a bigger name who can attract players. I filled in the gap. It needed to be filled in, and then somebody else can take over. I know Darren Bent came because of the money we saved him. But I love my time there. And I know you get slaughtered, but that's football. That's part of football. I don't actually read the papers. I tell my wife, don't read the papers, because it's going to be critical, a lot of it, and but we have this thought we have to stay up, and then that's what we're going for. But I know when Steve Bruce phoned me up, he said to me, can come in and have a chat with me. Because when Niall Quinn said to me, "Oh, you got a job for life," I said, "You can't give anybody a job for life. You just can't do that. It's impossible." And I wouldn't want that, Chris. I just wouldn't want that. It wouldn't be fair. And then Steve phoned me up and says, "I might have a little job for you." And I says, "Look, Steve, I might have a little job because Niall Quinn said, I think we should give Ricky a job." He went, "No, no, 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 no." So I said, "Okay, I'll come and have a chat." And then what it was just to have a look through the scouting. That's basically what it was. So it was a good 4 months for me to do. And went into Amsterdam and a couple of countries. But we have to be realistic that these top players are not going to come to Sunderland. Be honest with you, Chris. You're watching all these Ajax players, they're not going to come. They're just not going to come, But yeah, so that was good. And then after that, I packed in and I got, funny enough, Chris, I got offered a job at Newcastle. Funny enough, to take their under-18s. This would be, maybe September, October time that year. And I'd already said yes to the Scottish FA to be a national coach. So when I gave my word, I gave my word. I could have pulled out of it. I didn't think it was right. But regard that, listen, I love the club. I love the people. The fans are extraordinary. I know a little bit about the manager they've got now, Lee. I know a lot about him because I met him on my pro license. And he did offer me a job, Lee, not at Sunderland. He offered me a job. We were doing a pro license. We were in Turkey. Don't know if you remember it. And we were having a couple of jars and we're doing this sort of analysts on these games. And it was a World Cup. And he said to me, "I've been offered a job at Oldham." I went, "Oh, brilliant. I didn't know Lee. I met him just on the course." He says, "Do you fancy coming as my assistant?" And I went, "No, I don't." He says, "Why not?" I said to him, "Because you're the fourth. You've asked 4 people before me, and I'm the 5th person you've asked." So I said, "No, I'm not." I says, "No, I'm quite happy where I am." But he done the pro license. Done 2 years with his pro license with him. He's a lovely chap. But I went back. Monty invited me back to watch a couple of games as a guest, and it was lovely. It was lovely to go back and see a lot of the stewards that I knew, and faces that I hadn't seen for years, and they're still there supporting the club and loving it and working their tails off to make the club better. And the club is lovely. They've gone through bad times. That's how football is in general. But my time at the club, even the 6 months, it was hard work. My health went deteriorated badly, but it was worth it to keep them up. I can remember Ian Dowie saying something. He was on Sky, maybe in Sky, and he said something about when he joined Newcastle. He said, "I've got a lot of experience at this level, which will, keep me good, and I know where we're going." But he actually, before that, he got 3 teams relegated from the league. So I thought, well, that's not a bad thing, So I thought it's a good chance. It's a good chance I might get relegated, but the home in good stead. I've had these situations, but he didn't see the 3 clubs he took down get relegated. But no, it was fantastic. And even on the night, we went out on Sunday and Quinny with a few beers with Quinny, and then it felt good. It felt good because we stayed up, and no matter what and what health damage it caused me, it was worth it. Everything was worth it, and and even made me even think I couldn't be a manager again. I don't know how they do it, Chris. I honestly don't know how we do it, because on the first day I got the job, I got 169 missed calls on my phone that people don't even know my phone number. So that was the start of it. And I showed it to Quinny, and Quinny went, "I'll deal with it." That's as much I got. No, it was fantastic. The club, I love the club. I've got a lot of time for the club, and I may have only been there for that short spell, but I didn't want to be a manager. I couldn't be a manager, Chris, of a club when the team gets relegated and say the following season, "Oh, we'll get them back up," because you worked hard enough to keep them up. That's what it's like. when I hear that, I think, God almighty, we're going to work really hard to get back up and all that. We should work really hard to keep them in the league. That's how I see it, but that's how it is. That's how I thought. It might not make any sense, but to me, it makes a little bit sense that people after get relegated say, "Oh, well, we'll get back up again." It's a certainty. It doesn't always happen.
Yeah. Well, like you said, but when you left, you spent kind of 5 years with the SFA, with the under-17s, under-19s, and the under-21s with Scotland. And then in 2017, you joined Manchester United to take on the job of the under-23s. Now, I just want to ask you at this point, because you mentioned a lot at Sunderland, and you talked about Manchester United in your first spell about the Central League and the old reserve team structure. I mean, what's your thoughts on, after having you took the reserve team at Sunderland, you took the reserve team at Manchester United, and now kind of the under-23s at Manchester United years later. What's your thoughts on kind of the old reserve team structure where young players used to get that chance to play against more experienced players versus the current under-23 structure where when you go and watch them, it seems like sometimes they're just going through the motions and there's no real competitive edge to it. Do you think kind of the system's changed too much in one way?
I would prefer it. When the first years of Man United, 2005, we played like an under-18 team in an open age league. And I preferred that because it was great experience for them to play against these experienced players and try and learn the game. I know the under-23s, I might be wrong, might have a few overage players over it, but we would prefer that. Man United would have preferred that, to play against these experienced players, and teach our young players what it's all about. So I would actually prefer an open age league, and I know they've started to do it a little bit. I know Sunderland played Manchester United a couple of weeks ago, and Sunderland won 2-1, and that was like the 21s playing maybe 22s, 23s, and maybe a couple of senior players, which I think is good. But I know when I played, I can remember playing against Charlie George. I can remember that. I can remember playing against a player at Reading called Charlie Hurley. Not Charlie Hurley. Oh God, what's his name? I can remember him punching me. I can remember me running. I kicked him, and he says he won't do that again. I think his name, and they punched me. I ran out, played the ball, and I woke up about 4 days later. He just hit me, and that was me. But and then you could try to get used to that. But I think this like for like, 18s play 18s, and I'd like 18s play 20-olds, do it that way. I'd like an open age, and I'd like the league to get bigger. I'd like the Premier League to be the same league. So you probably get something like 20, maybe 24 games, 28 games, or 30 games. So you've got season as well, and I'd prefer that. But I know they've got like Division 1 and Division 2, but I'd prefer with it's all together. I can remember the football combination. We went to Plymouth. We went down as far as that. We played West Ham, we played Arsenal, played Chelsea, we played all the clubs, and there was something like maybe 17 teams. And it was great. And it was open age. So it'd be a 17-year-old playing against maybe a 28-year-old and learning the trade, trying to learn it. But I'd prefer it to be slightly open age.
Yeah. I remember going to watch all of the Sunderland reserve games, and every game seemed like a proper game. Whereas the under 21s now, it's very technical, but in terms of a competitive edge, I don't think you see a tackle.
No, they're not allowed to tackle now. It's just I would prefer for them. If you're saying if you go back to Man United, you talk about that even Michael Proctor would have played in the reserves at 17 at Open Age League, which would prepare him for the first team. Because he could be playing against a 27, 20-year-old, and we say to him, "How did you find it? What did he do?" He said, "Oh, he bossed me, or he get into the channel early, and he stopped me going to my right." Little things like that. So you would ask them questions, and then I think they learn from it. Where they play like for like, it could be just too easy for them, too simple for them. But I mean, that's my thought. I'd prefer open age.
Yeah. I've had those thoughts, but when I say them out loud, I just sound old. But there you go. But you left Old Trafford in May 2019. Then kind of just less than a year later, the pandemic kicked in. So kind of what you've been up to since Old Trafford, the job at Manchester United when you left there, and are you kind of tempted at all? I know we've spoke kind of before recorded about you spending time with your grandkids and your family, because big long career in football takes your time up. So do you feel like you'd get back in?
No, I think. I mean, Manchester United, the second time didn't go so well. You know, we got relegated the first year, and then the second year we were up there. But the problem is, what people don't realise is that on the first year, when it come to Christmas, we lost like 8 players from the team, and the other players were coming through weren't quite ready. And the second year was the same. We lost 10 players out on loan, so it's difficult. You know, what you probably find, Chris, is that teams will play Man United, play all of experienced players.
Yeah.
And we're playing 17-year-olds who not really should be playing reserve football yet. They're just not quite ready for it. But because we let 10 out on loan, who were probably the 20-year-olds and probably the sort of the 19-year-olds or 21-year-olds, then there's a big gap. So it didn't work too well for me on that then. And it was really down to that. And I spoke to Nicky when I first took the job over, because when I left the Scottish FA, that was it. You know, I'd come to the stage where you think, I'm travelling to Glasgow, I'm living in Glasgow. You know, Manchester was fortunate. I had a flat in Manchester, which helped me with Burnley, and then which helped me with Bolton. But the rest of the time, I'm still commuting. You know, for me to get to Manchester, I had to leave at 5:15 in the morning to get past the 62 to get into work, and then come back at 5:30 and get in at 7. I'd go to bed at 9:30. I'd be knackered, absolutely knackered. You know, so it was unfair. And when I took the job, I'd said to Nicky about, Neil Wood was there, and Neil was as a player when I was there, and I'd mentored him, and he was ready for the job. So Nicky offered me another job, to be fair, within the club. But I'd said no. If I'd lived in Manchester, I probably would have, but because it was New York, I thought maybe it was a bit of time to spend some time at home, you know, and see my wife now and again, you know, see how she is. And, you know, and when we had a break international, we were away for 2 weeks, you know, and things like that. And she's put up with it since probably 94, since I moved to Sunderland, you know. And I thought, well, I'm 65. I thought, well, maybe I was going to retire at 50. I wasn't going to be doing Scottish FA things and all that. And I thought, well, it'll be different. And it was different because it wasn't every day. It was just that 10-day period in international week or 2 weeks. That was fantastic. But then I did miss the everyday stuff. So it was a bit, so I didn't apply for my United job. I just got a phone call asking, would I be interested? And I said, yeah, I'll come down. And when I spoke to the boy, I said, well, can I do it for 2 years, 3 max? If it's not, then fine, that's okay. I don't have a problem with it, you know. So it didn't go well. It didn't go as well as the first time I went there, and it's all down to quality. The same quality of player wasn't there when I first was there, 03 to 05. Although now they're spending a little bit more money competing with the Man Cities and the Chelseas, you know, for young players. And they've got to be, you know, where previously, when I was there, they become automatic because of the badge and really because of the manager.
Yeah.
He had a big part to do with a lot of players. So it wasn't what I'd hoped for. But, you know, I think there was a time I had to say that's enough. You know, the boots are in the garage, and that's it. They're staying in there, and, you know. And I went to listen to Phil Neville, you know, down in St George's, a couple of things there, and I've actually been doing a couple of things, but I haven't done it, to be fair, Chris. I thought I'll just try and keep well away from it all, you know, and spend a bit of time. And I've got a couple of things on my wall. I did tell you last, I was with my beer mats, which shows, you know, Quinny and Michael Gray and Kevin Phillips. That I put up the other week, or maybe 3 weeks ago. Would normally sit in my drawer, and I thought, my wife lets me put a couple of things in here. But I've got 3 things in football in my house, and that's it. So, no, but it's been good. Their side's been good because it's stopped me driving, you know. And you live the 6 months at Sunderland. Every day I live for the job. You know, it was always in my mind. I couldn't sleep. I was worrying. The results weren't going so well, and then the players had doubts, and, you know, and I just glad on the day we managed to survive. You know, because if it didn't, I couldn't go back to Sunderland. I could never ever go back to Sunderland. I'd let them down. You know, so it's difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just on a final note about Sunderland, because we'll finish on Sunderland, because you had obviously the couple of spells at the club. And actually, I mean, the first one saw a huge transformation of the club, really, in the late 90s. We completely changed as a club of what we were and kind of what we are now. Well, what we are now, what we turned into when you were there. But I mean, what goes through your head now when you see Sunderland in League One?
I'm sad. I'm and don't get me wrong, and there's a lot of great British coaches in the country and managers, and they don't know the history of Sunderland. A lot of them, and I think they brought a couple of managers in that shouldn't have been there. Personally, that's my thought of it. And when you get these managers in, they bring all their own people, and then they all start talking their own language, and it becomes difficult. Really difficult. And I think now, and I think that was one of the reasons as well. And I think the biggest reason was Niall Quinn leaving. I think if Niall Quinn had stayed, I think they'd be still in the Championship. You'd look that way. They'd be back into it thereabouts. But for me, he was a rock at the club. You could go and speak to him. He was always accessible. He loved the fans. He was always available to them. And I think when he left, for me, he was a great chairman. He's a fantastic chairman, and he loved the club. He loved the city. He spent a lot of time out in Sunderland rather than being at home. And from my point of view, when he left, I think I was a big menace for Sunderland Football Club.
It was. It definitely started to change after that. But yeah, I mean, it's been difficult for anyone to watch football over the last 80 months and travel around. But and you said you were you've made a trip to Sunderland since. But I mean, now things have opened up a bit more. I mean, would fancy making a few trips up to see a few games at the stadium? Like?
Yeah, I'll probably give Bolly a phone. Yeah, I probably will. And go back. I mean, the infrastructure is there. There's everything there, like a lovely ground and a fantastic training ground. And I don't know the owner, but he seems to be a lovely bloke. And he's got these ideas, and the manager's good, Lee's good, and I think they'll go up this year. And then when and I think the Championship, then they obviously have to adapt to that. So maybe buying more players and things like that, but they'll get the crowds. And I think the Sunderland fans have been through hell. They always go through hell, and they've always been through hell. They always come back rejoicing. I do think that. And that's the debate about the club.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he said, well, the new owner certainly makes me feel old, having an owner who's only 23. but yeah, that's a different talking point altogether. But yeah, it'd be great to see you at the stadium, and hopefully you can pay us a visit at some point. But on that note, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you about your career, Ricky, and thank you very much for taking the time out for us. We really appreciate it.
No problem at all, Chris. It was a joy. I loved it. I'll go back to my glass of wine now.
It's been absolutely fantastic, and thanks again. And thank you again for everyone out there who's listening. Hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. And keep a lookout at all the usual places for our next pod dropping. Subscribe and like and all of that sort of stuff. But from us, it's bye for now.